Hello Kitty, me gusta mi titties, me gusta mi booty. Hoy me tomo selfie con filtro Hello Kitty.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dangerous Games Podcast. I am Courtney from Reckless Cards, and I'm here tonight with my stunning, beautiful, gorgeous, perfect, wonderful, gets better with every day, bestest friend I've ever had, hobby phenom, the original Mrs. Breaker, Sarah from Mrs. Squirt's Cards. How are you tonight, Sarah?
I am good. I believe all of that. The only part I believe I should say is that we are besties for life. The rest
Yes.
of it's like crock of poo.
You can't take a compliment.
I
You
never
can't.
can.
We have to get
But
better about that as people, you know? I feel like we have to get better at taking compliments. I
I
mean
think it's
what I
hard to
say.
take it because sometimes I mean, like from you, it's totally different. Like, and I'm always joking with you. But it's like I think in like a life in general, taking stuff like that is, do they truly mean it? We always think, is it like just like they're making fun of me? Or they, you know,
Do you know what that's
are they
called?
laughing?
There's
What?
a word for it. It's called imposter syndrome.
I am an imposter.
That's I feel the same way. Like it's hard to take compliments because you don't believe them to be true, even though they
Correct.
are. So, yeah, that
Whatever.
is a thing. It's a real thing.
To each their own.
So we have some so I'm gonna we have some big cases coming up. I am doing a big case this week. Sarah has a big case coming up. And then we did LT, which was a big one for us that we've been waiting for. It's gonna
I'm doing
get
the other side
some
soon
my
too.
next few cases are pretty gruesome too.
Doing the big
So,
Michael Irvin,
yeah.
go from a cowgirl to a bigger cowgirl. No, because it's funny because I was like, oh, I'm gonna do Michael Irvin. He's like, what are you gonna do it on? That he's awesome and the best player ever. I was like, no, he's a douche, and he's
I
just like
know.
LT.
It's crazy to me how many people like don't want to know the truth about their favorite athletes. And I feel like some people might hate this podcast because of that.
Well,
However,
truth hurts.
we do have a lot of big like I feel like for a long time I was doing like missing people, which is sad, or like robberies or things like that. And my last few between like Sam Shepard and his wife's murder, which was really gruesome, and then the last one I did was a family annihilator, which is pretty terrible.
Hmm.
The one I have coming up is really horrid. And but I think we're gonna start with a Sarah case tonight
Mm,
because mine is gonna be
me?
yeah, mine's gonna be a three-parter when I do it. So it's gonna be a big one. So you guys are gonna have to strap in. This is the first three-parter we've done. I have a bunch of two-parters, and we're gonna do a three-parter coming up.
Right, and then I'm gonna eventually do the Portland Jailblazers,
Yeah, and that's
which will
gonna be
be
a
quite a.
multi-part one too. Yeah.
Yep.
So who are you doing today, Sarah?
Well, I kind of want to make it a surprise. Well, you'll know within like the third sentence, but uh, that's my extent of surprise. Um,
I'm
but
excited.
it's just like I can't do it anymore. Like I did strawberry, like strawberries. It was fun, but it's like now it's like I just gotta tell you who it is. But I do think that this is somebody that maybe not a whole lot of people have heard about or know about or what he did or um the gist of who he is. So it was kind of like fun to kind of do some digging to figure out about this player. But with that, I'll just get started then.
Excellent.
So this week I am doing somebody that I feel like I had no information on. I had not heard of. Um he obviously was drafted when I was a kid, so that might be the reason why. But I feel like even when they're in the spotlight and they've done crimes, we do hear about them. This one's this one's kind of a crazy one. So, be interesting to see what you think.
I'm
So,
interested. I can't wait.
this player played for the St. Louis Rams. So maybe if you're a Rams fan, you may know who this is. Obviously now they are the LA Rams.
I'm not a Rams
I'm very aware of that you are a Grizzly Bear fan.
fan. No, a
Okay.
Chicago Bear. The Bears.
In the Bulls. Um so this NFL player had everything going for him, from his intellect to his looks. I mean, he was just the full package. But he also had a lot of money after joining the NFL. Darryl Henley was attracted to a lifestyle so opposite of what he was raised to accept, but did the justice system fail him too? So Darryl Henley was born on October 30th, 1966 in LA. Henley came from a very successful family, having both parents with college degrees and one brother graduating from Stanford and another from Rice. Very two huge
Wow.
schools, excuse me. But not just they were successful, so was he. He attended UCLA and he graduated with a 3.3 GPA in finance. So the man wasn't, he came from a very, very supportive family. And it was said that he and his family were so close that they would call or text all day, every day. It was kind of like they just like a circle of talking on the phone. Like if you didn't hear from somebody, there was something wrong type of situation because they were that close.
Wow.
The family, or excuse me, Henley even stated, "You can't look at me and say, oh, a product of the environment. I have some pretty awesome parents, and I was living a dream I worked my butt off for." So he comes out and he just honestly just starts saying, this isn't their fault. A lot of times, I don't want to say we put blame on parents, but the environment that people are growing up in can definitely help um, for the contributing factors and why they do what they do. And there's none of that here. There was
That's so
nothing.
wild to me when there's like it's just like they just chose to be bad people then.
Right. But like I said, the justice system, remember this, because
I don't know this case, so I'm already making assumptions. I'm gonna stop.
the justice system may have played a huge part in this too. Having been given the upbringing that he died for, Henley made sure that you knew that he was the problem and not his family. He made the decisions that would later change their lives forever. Having completed college at UCLA, Henley entered the 1989 draft. Henley would be drafted by the Rams in the second round, 53rd pick. After all, Henley was a cornerback, and cornerbacks don't go usually the first round and sometimes not even in the second round.
That's
Henley
true.
was excited to be picked by a team in the draft for a sport that he was passionate about and worked so hard. But then eventually he loses his interest in the sport. Henley states that the coaching staff for the Rams, before I go on, they did not have a lot of information on Henley's um, upbringing. Obviously, if it's like a very fine home, I guess, there's not a lot out there.
It seems like he
And
was trying to shield his family, so I doubt he talked about them a lot too.
definitely. And the fact that, um, like, they didn't even say his parents' names or his brothers' names. They didn't even say he had brothers. It was like I had to dig and dig and dig to find like little pieces to put together because nothing just said, "Oh, he has a family and these are their names." So it's like it's crazy because you see one that's a murderer and then you know everything, and then this it's like hush hush on some of it. So, but Henley would state that the coaching staff for the Rams would draft new players and Henley would vibe with them and get close to them, then the Rams would cut them. This occurred a few times with people that Henley felt close to, and with Henley being a social butterfly, it was gut wrenching. Right when he felt like he had a crew around him, they would cut those people.
That's rough.
Hmm
And that's part
It,
of it, it's part of what you're getting into.
it is, but I think at the same
It's not
time,
the
like
same as college though, because they all come up
right.
together in college and they play for, however many years together and then they move on to the next thing. So
Well, and then he was home. He was close to home at UCLA. With St. Louis, he's not close to home, so
yeah,
it's like he doesn't have that interaction with his family as often as he did when he was in UCLA. So Henley played for the Rams from 1989 to 1994, where he was their starting cornerback, and he would go on to play in 76 games for the Rams until he lost his way in the world. Henley started forgetting about the extra workouts he forced himself to push through while he was at UCLA to be his best version of himself. He started believing now that he had met all his goals and more, that he didn't need to do that anymore.
Complacent.
Correct. He had made the starting roster. What else did he need to do or prove? But skipping those extra workouts or weight training led Henley to hanging out with the wrong quote unquote friends and being out later and later. The light he had was starting to go dark. Once Henley was with people he called friends, or at least thought they were friends, he started down the path that has now put him in jail for 41 years.
Holy.
But was 41 years too much based on the crimes in the current statute, or in the current statute at the time of the crimes, was less than those that were given to him. So he was given double the amount of time when the statute's maximum was only a certain amount. So,
Wow.
where did this go wrong? We will come back to that question, but first, the crimes that were committed and the background leading up to 41 years in prison. I mean,
Wow.
that's a long time for.
So now I don't know if he killed somebody, but if he didn't, that seems insane because we've done cases where people have killed someone and done less than 41 years.
Yep. And it's about the same time frame too. It was like the 80s, early 90s.
Yep.
So, and this is California. So, or no, this would be St. Louis.
Yeah.
But
they're pretty strict in St. Louis.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say if it was California, it might make more sense. But so the dream of Henley would be shattered in 1995 when Henley was convicted on drug trafficking charges and sentenced to 20 years in prison. One of the state's key witnesses, Tracy Donahoe, was apprehended smuggling cocaine across the country, but she pointed the finger at Henley. He would tell police that he was she would tell, the police that he was the mastermind behind the drug trafficking scheme. Tracy and 3 others who were in on apprehended agreed to testify against Henley for a lesser charge. Of course they did. The crazy part is, Henley never touched or even orchestrated such criminal activities. According to him, Henley admitted to lending his childhood friend money, in which the friend used that money to purchase and move cocaine. Henley states that he never knew anything about this and was not financially gaining from this activity. Henley still, to this day, denies any involvement in that behavior as he was settled with the Rams. Like, he had everything going for him. Why would he do something like this? Yes,
Wow.
Henley was like a lot of other athletes, having multiple girls around him, multiple girlfriends, partying, going to the strip club, dabbing in this and that, but he still claims he was not a drug lord, like the prosecution painted him out to be. Those quote-unquote friends that should have been there to defend him in his eyes were no longer friends as they slowly turned their back on Henley. Henley had money, and therefore he was looked at being the bag behind the operation, but was he really involved? Just because you live a certain lifestyle or hang with the wrong crowd, does it instantly make you a criminal? Remember, he came from a very close-knit family, but had he really lost his way because he was not surrounded by positive individuals? People who were like him as a child. So I don't want to say like he in some sense kind of puts the blame on the Rams for like causing this to happen, because if they would have kept his friends, then like his teammates, maybe he wouldn't have gone down this. That's
inexcusable. You can be friends with like people that aren't drug addicts and criminals.
correct.
You chose who you wanted to be friends with outside of your team.
Well, and if you're giving money to a childhood friend, then that's not even a teammate. So that's like going back to like the beginning. And so was this something that's always been an ongoing issue that nobody knew about, and it's just coming to light because you finally got caught?
It's also wild for him to be like, I had no part in this. That would be like, I can't imagine. I don't know how they prove that he did or did not know. Like, how do you prove that? If I lent you, if you were like, hey, Court, I need $5,000, and I'd be like, okay, Sarah, I would trust you. We're friends, and I gave you $5,000, and then you use that $5,000 to buy drugs, and I didn't know it. There had to be
Right.
some kind of proof that he knew. Otherwise, like,
How
you
does
can't,
this
like,
stick?
anyone can say anything.
Correct. How does this stick? And that's exactly kind of how my mindset was when I was reading about this guy. Was like, how do you just like do a guilty plea or like a guilty verdict on this guy when it is literally he said she said, and unless there's like proof, that's usually what you need. Um, but it gets a little bit more juicier. So obviously that's only for the 20 years.
Right, because you said 41. So
Mhm.
how I don't understand if he's in prison for 20 years, how he ends up getting more time. Did he do something in jail?
Maybe.
Oh my goodness.
So, while in jail, awaiting his sentencing for the drug trafficking charge, so at this time he hasn't gotten the 20 years. He's sitting there like waiting, chilling. Henley paid a guard to smuggle a mobile phone in so he could talk to his family and his fiance. Henley's fiance had just given birth to their daughter.
Tell
And
me he
at
didn't get 21 more years for a cell phone.
no,
Okay.
and at that exact point, Henley was at his lowest of lows. What's interesting? In 1995, the Rams would go to win the Super Bowl, and
Mm-hmm.
he would have had a Super Bowl ring.
Yep.
So it was a double blow for him at that point. Having felt like the justice system and the world was against him, Henley didn't know where to turn. But asking a guard for a phone probably wasn't the smartest idea.
No.
Another inmate on his cell block found out about this phone and put Henley in contact with a man called Joey Gambino,
Oh,
a mafia member. When I first read about that, I was wondering what use a mafia member could be from Henley, but I soon figured it out. Money started running out for Henley, and the pressure to get home to be with his baby girl and fiance was weighing heavily on him. The court cost alone to defend himself was making him go broke. Henley was appealing his conviction when Gambino reached out to him to help him to see if Henley deal. So I'm like, dude, you're already on thin ice with this drug deal, with this drug stuff, dude. Like, why are we doing another one? So Gambino offered Henley a stake in a heroin deal,
oh,
and Henley accepted it. To this day, Henley stated that he did it purely for the money, but this didn't look good for Henley as he was already convicted of a drug charge. But things went downhill real quick. So this mafia member, reaches out to him and says, "Hey, I can get you some money. You want to do drugs?" Okay. That's on a scale of really bad crimes and like not so bad crimes. So that's probably down to not so bad. I know it's
right.
not
It's not great, but
right. It's not
I agree
murder.
with you.
It's not other things that it could be. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that was that one conversation. Then Henley did not have enough money to give up front for the drug deal. So Gambino offered to murder the key witness, Donahoe, and the judge of Henley's case,
Oh my God.
Gary Taylor, and then take his fee from Henley's upcoming drug earnings. Being so angry and humiliated by the injustice seen during the case proceedings, Henley agreed to this deal. Um, in a phone conversation. It's stupid. Like all the other conversations between the two, Gambino, who was not actually a mafia member, but an undercover DA agent,
Of course he was. Of course he
recorded
was.
this one. The phone recordings were given in an evidence against Henley in court, leading to him being convicted of both drug trafficking and solicitation of murder.
Mm-hmm.
On the day Henley was charged, the inmate, or the informant for the DEA, who put Henley in touch with Gambino, the fake mobster, was released from prison.
Of course he was.
Yes. Henley would be charged with conspiracy to commit murder on a judge and would be hit with 21 more years to be served consecutively, not concurrently,
Yep, that makes sense.
giving him a
That makes
total of
sense.
41 years in prison, and he would walk out of prison at the age of 61. The worst part is the trials on both of these charges was a mess. There is so much controversy over the legitimacy of this case. For example, for drug trafficking, Henley would have been sentenced for 10 years minimum purely because of laws that had been put into place much earlier due to, quote unquote, the war on drugs,
Right.
which for a man who only ever lent money to a friend seems like a harsh sentence.
Yep.
Not to mention the number of injustices that took place during his trials. The jury contained a great deal of corruption, with one juror being openly racist towards the defendants, a second juror admitted to using meth during the trial. A third juror not only discussed the trial with other two defendant jurors in their daily carpool, but showed up to Henley's residence a week before the verdict to bribe Henley with an innocent vote for $25,000.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
This should have been thrown out. How did
He's,
this even go
he's still
through?
sitting there. Yeah. The racism within this case is further displayed by the fact that Donahoe, the only Caucasian who was caught red-handed trafficking suitcases full of cocaine, was sentenced to only 4 months in a halfway house.
Unbelievable.
Right? It's going to get worse.
Oh my God, it's so bad already. And like I was like with him and like on board of like this isn't his fault until he, tried to get a undercover DEA agent to kill a judge. That's pretty bad.
It is. But in the desperate times, you just became a father. You're
I
already behind for 20 years possibly. All this other stuff. If the witness is gone, then there's no trial. But the judge wanted, that's a big hit. Like
that's why he got so much time.
yes. But to do it consecutively, like that's kind of tacky too. But another cause for concern within the case is the possibility of entrapment being
Yes.
the only cause for Henley's extended sentence. It has to be asked whether Henley himself would have chosen to participate in another drug deal if he had not been offered the money.
Well, yeah,
Then,
and also it was like, wasn't it the guy's like he's like, I can kill the judge. And it wasn't like his idea, like maybe you should go kill the
correct,
judge.
correct.
Mm,
hmm Then comes the issue of the solicitation of murder. You jumped right into it. It's a massive leap from being silent financial aid for a drug deal to paying for murder of two people, one of which you know quite well. It's like you just jump so much. It made
it's
no
wild.
sense. But could Henley have even thought this up himself? He was desperate and going through a lot. But is that enough to convince yourself that murder is a way out? The undercover DEA agents suggest that this is an offering. Oh, excuse me. Suggest this is enough to convince. Where am I? And offering this without any upfront cost to make the deal that much sweeter is textbook entrapment, which should not have held up in court. As if this wasn't enough, the injustice within this case were made worse when the Ninth Circuit reviewed the case in 2001 and decided that Henley's case is about the racial bias warranted a more in-depth look. However, the judge and the presiding prosecutor made it all go away by releasing the rest of the defendants who had served a fraction of their sentences.
They were
Which
going
were,
after this guy.
right, right? And that's where I was like, what do they want? What is it? What is the blood on his hands? You know,
Whose wife did he bang?
I don't know. The judges, which were already 2 decades shorter than Henley's. Henley was not released because he had given up his right to contest the verdict of the trial as part of his guilty plea in the drugs for murder scheme against with the DEA. So you trapped him into believing that it wasn't going to be an issue, and you trap him into his thoughts.
And his lawyer sucked.
Oh, obviously, I mean, but he paid a lot. He paid
That's
a
what I'm saying. Like, his
lot
lawyer
in this
sucked.
court. Henley was initially placed in a maximum security prison. However, due to good behavior, he was transferred to a low security facility in Yazoo City. He has frequent visits from his daughter, with whom he has managed to maintain a good relationship with despite his incarceration.
That's so sad.
It's depressing. I mean, this is way too far. I think maybe 20 years for both crimes. Maybe.
I mean, the one crime is like, you don't like, he gave someone money. He didn't know. Like, I don't know, man. They had better have like absolute proof that he knew what that money was being used for. Otherwise, it's like anytime you lend money to someone, if they do something illegal with it,
Right.
are you like culpable for that?
Well, and the sucky part is like, so I got really invested in this case, but since he's trying to appeal again, you can't get all the deets, like really, really good stuff about it, because it's not made aware because he's trying to appeal it.
Right, I'm sure it's all like lockdown and like gag
Yeah.
ordered and stuff.
So I think once he finalizes his last appeal, then maybe it'll become more, open. But I was just like, man, I need this. That exactly like what you're saying is like, how do you get to this point where you're like, his money, and he did not know, or he did know, like, how do you know that? But he's done a lot of good.
I mean, this is 95. It's not like they had like text messages and stuff.
I think he
Did
gets
he
out
write
in
notes?
what,
Were they writing
36?
notes?
I know. It's so crazy. So while he's been in prison, he has utilized his good education and his degree from UCLA to help other inmates gain their GEDs.
Oh, that's nice.
In 2018, Henley released a personal statement about his time in prison. He spoke about prison reform and his belief that true reform must address both public policy and personal identity. At the time, the Republicans were trying to get a bill called the First Step Act passed within the U.S. Senate. Republican Senator Grassley stated that this bill focuses law enforcement resources on violent career criminals instead of nonviolent, lower-level offenders, which could be done by doing away with mandatory minimum penalties for low-level, nonviolent crimes and leaving sentencing to a judge's discretion. This gave hope to end prolonged family separation and reoccurrence of criminal behavior. Henley stated that the efforts to pass this bill gave him hope that reform policies would improve and he. Henley described his first-hand experience of the 2018 prison policy's detrimental effects in his capacity as a prison educator. There were limited vocational and educational opportunities for prisoners, as well as separation and estrangement from family, with at least 90% of men incarcerated in federal prisons receiving few to no visitors. All of this creates a very lonely existence, which we know to be incredibly damaging to a person's mental health. Henley then goes on to talk about a visit from two clergy members and his conversation with them, which lasted about 2 hours. This visit and show of compassion were a gift, Henley said, confirming in him a sense of worth and hope. Henley ends his statement with a quote from the 17th century scientist and mathematician All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. Henley has led a tragically interesting life so far, accomplished his dreams, and had it all taken away because of a few decisions made by him and those around him. Who knows whether things would be different had he not been put in contact with Joey Gambino? Would he have received such a harsh sentence where there's not so much racism and bias present in the jury? He is reported to be an intelligent man who spends his life educating others and giving them the chance to make better lives for themselves once they are released. Do we really believe that this is the kind of man who could come up with a scheme to have people murdered on his own and knew exactly where that money was going?
That's wild. I don't think so. I mean, do I think he was smart enough? Maybe. Do I think that this case is kind of crap and entrapment and hearsay and that it should probably not have gone where it went? Yes, absolutely.
I agree. I don't know how like I said, without knowing the facts, without being able to read the actual case itself, which a lot of these cases I actually do read them, the real case themselves. Um, without having that access, I don't know.
There had to be
Um,
something, right? There had to be some kind of smoking gun to prove that he knew where that money was going, because otherwise it's literally like, I can't imagine going to prison because you lent someone money.
that or the fact that there was four against him. It's like I don't know. I was very angry when I was reading about this because it's like I feel like until we know, we won't know. But his daughter is going to be 41 by the time he can have a relationship with her outside of a prison wall.
Good job to his ex-fiancée, because I'm assuming she probably moved on, and
Nope.
keeping No, she waited for
They
him?
they married. They
See, that
are
makes me feel like
together.
he was a good person who like, and she clearly believes him.
Yep.
I don't
And
know.
she does. She goes to all his appeals. She sees him as often as they can. They move to be closer to
Wow, she's,
him.
like, truly obviously, like, he's, like, really the love of her life, huh?
Yeah, and he looks forward to getting out and spending, you know,
Whatever
hopefully
time he has
30 to
left.
40 more years with her, but he is in the process of appealing again. He was denied the first time, and um, they just I just feel like he is deserves a new trial.
Missouri is such a tough state. I hope he gets it. I hope it happens for
Me
him.
too. Me too.
Man, that was terrible. I feel like he got railroaded for sure.
I just think it's wrong.
Wow.
I just
That was a crazy story I never heard before.
I hadn't either. I had no clue who this guy
There's
was.
another guy that I'm gonna do, and it's kind of like a ridiculous story. It's not like that one that yours was very heavy. This guy, like, also got busted trafficking drugs, and it's more of like uh, it's it's like a crazy story, not
Mm.
like a like that was traumatic sounding, and that
Like,
poor
if he was
baby.
driving the car, okay, he knew. He was part of it. But, like, how he says, like, "I was so settled with the Rams. I had everything going for me. I was a starting player." And it's like, w why would he has a fiancé, he has a
A
baby on
baby,
the way,
a good
like,
family.
what?
So, like, what he was guilty of was hanging around with scumbags, it sounds like.
And then, obviously, to doing a hit. Mhm.
Well, yeah, I mean, that
Yeah,
was, like, offered to him while he thinks his whole life is falling apart.
which
Again,
I mean, desperate times calls for desperate I mean, definitely
that might
they
be a little too
vulnerable.
desperate. He was
Mhm.
definitely vulnerable.
Mhm.
Wow, that was wild. Well, hey guys, everyone who's listening, let us know what you think because I'm curious to see if you kind of have the same view on this as Sarah and I do, or if you're like, no, man, there's probably something in those court documents that proves that he knows it. And if you put out a hit on a judge, you probably deserve to do 41 years in prison, even if it wasn't initially your idea. Because if someone was like, hey, court, do you want to do a hit on a judge? I'd be like, nah, fam, I'm good.
And it's not really on my to-do list. It's not on my
Yeah.
bucket list.
Yeah, things I'm not gonna do, put a hit out on, like, anyone, but especially a judge. So,
Yeah.
well, thanks for listening, guys. Let us know what you think, and until next time, make good choices. Make better
Please.
choices than Henley here. Let's make better choices than him. All right? Your friends. What is this the old saying? Your friends, the 5 people you're closest to are, like, that's who you are as a person. So, choose wisely who you spend your time with. Until next time, bye.
Me gusta